everyone, it's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. This is going to be my comic book thoughts arranged in a comic book countdown. I'm going to talk about the comics that I read that originally came out May 4th, Wednesday, May 4th. And I've got 7 books this time, and actually only 6 of them physical and 1 digital. One did not show up in any of my shops, and then just by luck, I discovered that it was on Hoopla already. So the U.S. Library's digital comic book resource, Hoopla, which I use often. So I was able to read it there. It's been a while. I've been having trouble getting back into the groove. Maybe it's been 5 weeks since I've done a comic book countdown. And reminder, it's always totally subjective based on my personal reaction to the comics, my personal enjoyment of the comics in the time that I read them. And putting out timely, or in my case, semi-timely comic book coverage, comic book reviews every week is not that easy. And I thought at the end of this video is a little clip where I show the people that I watch who are doing it every week. So that, and they're all worth checking out if you're interested in keeping up with new comics and hearing people chat about them. So you can check those out. And for me this week, which I just caught up on of May 4th, it's already the next week. And I have, I think, 13 comics to get to. So let's see if I can do that before the next Wednesday and put up a video. But these all kind of landed in the middle for me, or the upper middle. They were all B. If we're giving letter grades, they were all comics that I would give Bs to, maybe a B+ here or there. So little tricky to rank, but a few had a little less favor in my eyes than others for this particular month of their publication. So in at number 7 was what was often a favorite comic, was Once and Future. And I'm just carrying less, and the breakneck speed of the plot and the slightly confusing elements of the plot suddenly don't. I mean, the art has always carried me through to an extent because it kind of dazzles me, but there was a certain sense of chaos with the art to me this time around. Let's see, find some other pages that won't give anything away. But I don't know. The whole thing felt like, anyway, I mean, like I said, they're all B level comics. It felt, though, that I ranked this lower because it just felt a little less. I cared about it a little less, and it felt a little just sort of chaotic. I couldn't. And part of it is maybe not remembering who all the characters are. There was a crucial scene with someone, and I think she was a bad guy, but then I wasn't quite sure. I couldn't quite remember. Kieran Gillen does not like to help out the reader too much or much at all. So I just felt a little more frustration with that. And also, I don't know, this seemed to be one of the less inspired covers to me too. But it's amazing that Dan Mora continues to do this series plus all that he's doing over at DC. I think he's doing 1 or 2 series at DC also. So anyway, it was what it was. Do I drop Once and Future? Because I'm not enjoying it as much. One thing is that there's too many good comics out there in a way, and I have to parse through them. And the comics are getting more. Oh, that's another thing. There's a bunch of comics now that are $4.99 for a regular comic, and that was the case with this. For some reason, they jumped the price up to $4.99 on this issue, and I saw in previews, at least it's listed as a $3.99 comic 2 issues from now in the most recent previews I read. So I don't know if, because this was issue 25 and they had a whole bunch of text that was kind of fairly too small and unreadable, or so small it was unreadable. I didn't try to read it beyond a few sentences. Were we paying an extra $1 for these four text pages at the back? No, 3 text pages at the back. I don't understand why this one was an extra $1, unless really the price is going up to $5 an issue, and what they had in previews was wrong. Do I want to pay $5 for this? Yeah, so for me, a lot of the process, and someone mentioned sometimes I'm kind of hard on comics and just dump them, is because there's so many good comics. They cost a lot of money, and so I have to make my choices. And because this was a small week, I wasn't going to get Rocketeer #2, which I've now put at number 6. I wasn't going to get it because it's a $4.99 book, and it's just okay. It's written and drawn by this artist, Stephen Mooney. At least I've only known him as an artist in the past. I think I've seen him on other comics. And the art's not bad. It's tough having to live up to Dave Stevens. And there's a bit of an uncanny valley at times with the faces, the way they're drawn from models or something, and it makes some of the panels stiff and such. But the art's not terrible, good coloring, and it's a fun enough plot in the tradition of the Rocketeer. But is there anything special about it? And how much do I care? How much do I care about these characters beyond when Dave Stevens was drawing them? I love this cover, actually, by Gabriel Rodriguez. It would have been fun to have Gabriel Rodriguez or some artist like him, or another distinctive artist. I think Stephen Mooney's fine, but he doesn't stand out to me. But the main thing is, why should I get this for $5? It was only 20 pages of actual comics. Most comics are listed as 32 pages, and that includes the covers and whatever ads. It's just how many pieces of paper are in the comic, not how many pages of stories. This one does have, and the other one, the first issue, has this interesting oral history of Dave Stevens with quotes from different artists and writers and people who knew him. And that actually is quite interesting. Whether it adds an extra $1 value, I don't know. Another thing I was thinking about is, with this week somehow, and actually it played in particularly with my number one choice, what makes us care about a fantasy story? These are all different kinds of fantasy, but often it's a return to a familiar formula, right? So what makes, other than it's the fantasy formula that we like, what makes us care about it? What makes us hook into the characters? And that can be kind of tricky. I put One Star Squadron in at number 5. This is the final issue of One Star Squadron, and Mark Russell does great jobs with endings, and this was a good ending, but weirdly, I couldn't quite remember enough about what happened in the previous issue, maybe because I took so long to get around to reading some of these things. So it might be my fault that I didn't rank this higher, or it might be just the general kind of, I was never quite as engaged with One Star Squadron as I have been with other Mark Russell written comics, such as My Bad, and of course the Flintstones and everything. And I think partially it was because the main note of the story here was just the sadness of work. And so it didn't make me care so much about the individual characters, and they had a certain air of pitifulness to them. Although I certainly related to the feeling of being trapped in a not very good work world. I've experienced that a number of times in my life, believe me. So anyway, like I said, these are all fairly decent. This whole issue is kind of a coda also, which can sometimes work better than others. So it's more like the character wandering around saying, "Oh, here's what I realized about this, and here's what I realized about that." So it wasn't as integrated into the events of the comics as some endings might be. A little higher on my list at number 4, a righteous thirst for vengeance. The previous issue, which probably I didn't get to talk about in a comic book countdown, would have ranked much higher for me. This issue, it felt like kind of a piling on of events, more bad things happening to the characters, but it starts to begin to feel a bit repetitive. The last issue made us feel like we were making some movement forward in both character and plot revelation, and here it just seemed like plot action again. I'm definitely, sticking with this comic. I wish occasionally the colorist would give the line work a little more air, a little bit of that graying over, that browning over of some of the scenes, but otherwise still interesting stuff. But yeah, I'm not quite as all in with this issue on Righteous Thirst for Vengeance as I have been in the first, 6 issues. This is issue 7. So I rank that at number 4. Little Monsters, I'm ranking at number 3. Jeff Lemire and fantastic art by Dustin Nguyen. I still love the black and white with the kind of, Ben-Day dot kind of created gray tones. I know they're not actually Ben-Day dots, but I'm not sure what to call them. And this issue was cool. It progressed the plot, and the issue 2 really brought this comic into focus, and this progressed those elements nicely. It had less opportunities for us to be wowed by the art. The art was a bit more the scenes, and were a lot of just conversations and stuff. So while I still enjoyed the art a lot, maybe that wow factor was a little bit lower. Again, just making excuses of why it's not number 1, but not every book can be number 1. But Little Monsters is a cool book. I'm assuming it's going to have a short run. It doesn't say on the cover or anything, 3 out of 6 or 3 out of 10, but I can't see it going on forever, but we'll see. A lot of vampire books all of a sudden, aren't there? And as always, tons of post-apocalyptic books. So Little Monsters got both that going on. Okay, in at number 2 was Archer and Armstrong, which was the book I could not get at any of my shops. I think I had asked for it on my pull list, but it didn't come through. And I thought about just skipping it or driving off to another comic book store that there's one a little further away from me that has the deepest selection of new comics, Cosmic Monkey. But I decided not to do that. But then I looked on Hoopla, just not really expecting to find it, and there it was. There was Archer and Armstrong, brand new issue, available on the Wednesday that it came out physically for free for library users whose libraries are hooked up with Hoopla. And I enjoyed it a lot. It was almost my number 1 comic. It was held back by the art. The script was really funny. We got all the classic interaction between Archer and Armstrong, but it didn't feel like just going through the movement motions. It just, for me, it felt organic and real within the cartoony universe of the wacky universe of Archer and Armstrong. And I enjoyed the kind of almost absurdist Steve Gerber-like villains. There were a bunch of gardeners who also sell odds and ends that they've stolen to some evil, eccentric billionaire or millionaire. And it did have kind of a gross factor in that Armstrong loses his ear and it doesn't heal. But that was kind of an interesting take on, his immortality and Archer's feelings about Armstrong and being upset that he might not be immortal anymore. But so the big drawback, because this is a comedy book with a lot of personality, but the art was just very competent, professional illustration. And I wanted art with a personality, with a sense of humor built into it itself, or a sense of style. You know, the original Archer and Armstrong was written and drawn by Barry Windsor Smith, and that obviously had its own unique Barry Smith style and a unique Barry Smith humor. It's actually amazing that any writer after Barry Smith has managed to capture that, but I think this writer has. There was another series they did where they went inside Armstrong's magical rucksack bag, and that was very well scripted also, and I can't remember who did that script. I was meaning to follow that writer, but that was many years ago, so it's been a while. Valiant in general has been very slow at rolling out books since I think they got sold. So anyway, this gives me some hope for Valiant. At least they've picked a good scriptwriter here. But on the other hand, their distribution is crappy at this point. I think their presence in the marketplace is no longer significant at all. Another weird thing when I think about it with Valiant books is it's very clear who the creator of Archer and Armstrong is. It's Barry Windsor Smith. You know, maybe Jim Shooter was involved too, but he was the writer and artist for the first 10 issues or so. It was his baby, and it bears his mark of his Barry Smith sense of humor. Until Archer and Armstrong, I had no idea Barry Smith had a sense of humor because I was used to those post-Raphaelite-like paintings and the Conan drawings and stuff. But anyway, why don't they credit created by? I suppose legally they don't want to do that. But in this day and age, it seems like an important detail in a comic like that to mention who the original creators were. Anyway, that said, I'm really looking forward to Archer and Armstrong, and I suppose if a physical copy comes along next week or something, I will snap it up because I think I want to collect this whole run for however. It's probably just a mini series also. So it was close, but the art kind of pushed Archer and Armstrong into the number 2 position, and I'm making Twig my number 1 comic of the week of May 4th. It's written by Scotty Young, and more importantly, art by Kyle Strahm. And his art blows you away. If you like fantasy art, if you like, there's a whole world in children's pictures books where there's some incredible artists. I don't know if Kyle Strahm comes out of that, but that's how it feels. I feel like when reading this, I feel like I was reading an incredible children's illustrated picture book. And that's where the sort of why it's even this is still kind of in the B, maybe B plus area. The art is A plus, but the story it's very slight so far. We get the feeling maybe we're about to enter a more complicated fantasy world, but we don't have a lot to make us care about our main character other than he's a cute fantasy children's character. And that he's really well drawn, and that the world he lives in is really well drawn. But why we should care about this yet another Hobbit kind of character, I guess. Hey, I'm off on my mission, and I'm meeting this guy and that guy, and so maybe it's me being an old reader who's read too many fantasy novels, and I'm waiting for the shoe to drop of why should I actually care about this? Now, as I progressed through it, these 6 pages could each be a full-blown page in a beautifully illustrated children's book. Each panel, sorry. So there's an amazing amount of work and imagination on the artist's part. like a new, almost like a new imaginative creation on every page and sometimes every panel. So it's a bit of an illustrative masterpiece, I think. Maybe I'm going too far for that. And then we did have a twist on the very last page. I almost showed it to you, but I didn't, luckily, which did up my interest a little bit in what's going on, but I still don't have any sense of stakes on a personal level or on the world level. Although the world is in danger kind of storyline only goes so far at this point, since we read about the world is at stake in so many stories constantly. But yeah, I'm definitely going to get more Twig, if for the art alone, but hopefully for the story too. And can I find some more Kyle Stram somewhere? It also, I should say, was colored by Jean-Francois Boulot, who colors every book that Scotty Young's involved with in some way. And he is a fantastic colorist, and he adds a lot to, because these don't look like it was done by a team. It looks like it was done by a single painter. He captures whatever needs to be captured in the line art and transfers it into color art in a fantastic way. So, yeah, hopefully this seems like the kind of thing that needs to come out in a really oversized hardback with great binding, of course. So anyway, I hope this will recharge my batteries and I will get to my 13 comics that I just got yesterday in a timely manner and find time to shoot a video about it. Stay on just to see my little list of people who do weekly comic book reviews. And if you know of other people who do it steadily, because that's my point, like lots of people do interesting coverage and reviews of comics, but these are the people right now who I see do it every week, week in, week out, and do a good job of it. So talk to you all later, and cheers. So here are the few channels that I know of that put up comic book reviews every week. In no particular order, but first up, because he gets them out first every Tuesday, is Rockin Robbie at Pop Culture Philosophers, and a very useful resource too, because he covers so many comics. And then another great resource is Comic Uno, who has been doing weekly comic book reviews for as long as I can remember, longer than I've been on YouTube, which is amazing. She does a great job, and definitely a bedrock of the comic book YouTube community. Relatively new compared to that is Lorenzo with his indie comics review. And he every week covers 3 indie comics, usually comics he recommends, although sometimes he'll be down on a comic here or there, but very useful. And then if you're into Batman, here's our man who's always on Batman, Sean from MinutiaMinute. He puts up his reviews on Tuesdays also, just reviewing all the Batman comics he got each week. Because other than that, he collects in trades. And as I said, in no particular order, but another excellent one is the live show from Comics Will Break Your Heart, Casually Comics with Jennifer and Mars. They have strong opinions. They're not afraid to say them. They read a lot of comics. Excellent stuff to watch every week, every Sunday. Every week we also get Cranky comic reviews from Taylor Winder, and highly enjoyable, usually quite cranky. Usually quite timely in his how quickly he puts out his reviews. Another reviewer, this is the newest one to me, is officially Unofficial Geek, and she covers comics every week so far that I've seen, and definitely one to check out. Last but not least is Nick from Comic Culture. He puts out, he reviews quite a few comics every week and is very consistent and enjoyable to listen to. I also have kind of recently discovered him and need to check out more of what he does. So there you have it, a bunch of people to check out. Maybe there's some more people out there that you can let me know about. And I hope you all guys all are having a great comic book week.